After the show, I went out for another long walk. I seem to be doing that a lot lately. I wondered if isolating myself helped me to think clearly or if it might be making it tougher for me to see the big picture. I finally dragged myself home around dawn and left a message that I wouldn't be in to work. I had decided what to do, but didn't feel any better because of the decision. The appointment was late afternoon. I got to the church office about 10 minutes late because of some hang-ups with dropping off Danny. I tried calling to warn Brian, but it went through to his voicemail. When I arrived, I saw Jenny's car, so I hurried to the door. I went inside, but there was no one else in the lobby as usual. When I got to the Brian's office, something I heard made me stop. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, it just happened so fast. Maybe I should just go. Brian sounded shocked. Jenny, you can't mean that. He is so upset all the time. I just can't take seeing what I have done to him. I love him more than anything, then I ruined his life. Maybe he's better off if I just went away. Jenny sounded miserable. But you don't want that, do you? She paused. No, I want to find a way to fix this mess, but how can you fix something this broken? I don't want to hurt Danny, but if it will help John, I'd be willing to move back to New York and start over again. I heard her voice break as she finished. Jenny, I can't tell you what to do, but I strongly urge you to talk to John about any major decisions you make. He might not be in the frame of mind you hoped for, but he is trying. You can't expect him to just put what's happened out of his mind, can you? Brian, you don't understand. I'm not thinking about doing this because I'm unhappy about how he's treating me. I spent 6 months trying to find a way to make up for what I did, hoping he'd never have to find out. I knew how horrible it was, but I underestimated how much it would hurt him. I don't think he's ever going to be able to look at me without thinking about what I did. If I can't find a way to make things better for him, then I should go away so he doesn't have to look at me anymore. I just want him to be happy, no matter what it takes. I owe him that. I didn't want to walk into the middle of that, so I went back to the front door and closed it loudly. As I approached Brian's office, I started talking loudly so they would know I was there. Hey guys, sorry I'm late. As I rounded the corner, I saw Jenny facing away from me, wiping her eyes with a tissue. Is everything okay? I tried to sound surprised. Brian answered, yes, we were just talking about something while we were waiting. Jenny, are you okay to continue? She nodded. Then let's pick up where we left off last week. You two have made a lot of progress dealing with problems related to the separation. Now it's a question of where to go from here. Jenny, what are you hoping to accomplish? She was silent for a long time. I thought she was going to beg off because of what I heard outside the office. She looked over at me and surprised me with a very honest answer. I want John to give me another chance. Brian waited for a few moments to see if she'd elaborate, then responded. Well, that isn't exactly what I had in mind. Why don't you think of a more short-term goal we can work toward while John gives us his answer, John? I looked at him, wondering how I should answer. Then I looked at Jenny, who had looked away. The way she was sitting made me think she was feeling incredibly alone. She probably expected me to hate her forever, yet she was coming to these sessions. She had answered all my questions truthfully at the park, even when I knew they were humiliating. Whether it was because she hoped I could someday forgive her or because she honestly was willing to do anything to make up for her transgression, I couldn't guess. In the end, her motives weren't important to me. I looked down to the floor. I want Jenny to come home. I waited for a moment before looking up. When I did, I could see the bomb I just dropped had caught both of them by surprise. Brian sat back, completely shocked. We had never discussed me even considering reconciliation. As far as he knew, the best result we could hope for would have been an amicable parting so both of us could get on with our lives. Jenny looked at me incredulously like she thought it was a cruel joke. I realized at that moment how deeply I had hurt her. Jenny, I love you and I miss you. I know I haven't given you any reason to believe there was a chance for us, but you've still been trying. There's no way to make up for what you did, but if you want to come home and try to start over, I'm willing to do my best to make it work. I paused, and then added, for us and for Danny. I waited to see what her reaction would be. She got up from her chair without saying a word, walked in front of me and dropped to her knees. She put her head in my lap and put her arms around my hips, beginning to cry again. I finally stopped fighting the urge to comfort her and gently stroked her hair back with my hand. Finally I stood, pulling her to her feet. I kissed her for the first time in over 2 months and she melted against me. After a minute, I gently pushed her back. There are things we have to talk about first, okay? She looked at me with some uncertainty, but nodded. I looked over to give our host the chance to speak. Brian, is it okay for me to keep going, or do you have any questions? He couldn't help but laugh. John, I think we've had too many of these meetings. That sounds like something I'd say. He indicated we should continue. Jenny, I've given it a lot of thought. We have to come up with ground rules that we both agree to. Things are really screwed up and I need things I can count on before we can go forward. As I laid out my requests, she listened intently. When I finished, she eagerly jumped in. That's fine, I'll do anything to make it up to you. Brian spoke up. I don't think that's what he wants, is it, John? No, it's not. Seeing Jen's puzzled expression, I clumsily tried to explain feelings I didn't fully understand. I married a strong, self-confident woman who changed my life. I don't want you to come back as someone who's willing to do anything for another chance. I want the woman I married. Think of it like a glass that was broken. If we just tape it together, it will never last and won't make anyone happy. If we take the pieces, melt it down and start over, we can make it strong again. Is that okay, Brian? He looked impressed. Yes, that's actually very insightful. When a couple goes through the kind of situation you've endured, many times the thing that does them in is one spouse trying too hard. The imbalance it creates causes unforeseen problems. The spouse trying to be accommodating can eventually feel unappreciated and resentful. The other spouse can lose respect for someone who is constantly willing to be degraded. The best intentions can cause the worst results. I took the lead again. There have to be rules because of what's happened, but they aren't to punish you or test your loyalty. I expect you to suggest your own rules and I fully expect you to hold me to all the ones we both agree to. I couldn't help stroking her cheek with my fingers while I talked. When we first got together, it took over a year to learn about each other and work out how we should handle things. If we're going to try to start over and do it without taking that kind of time, we need to set up rules that neither of us is allowed to break, for any reason. Hopefully that will give us a place to start from. Jenny was trying to keep up with everything, but it was obviously difficult. My announcement had been such a shock that she was having trouble following what was being said. I know she'd agree to anything if I'd just give her a chance to make up for what happened, but I needed her to understand that what I was asking was more than that. If I was going to open myself up to her after what she had done, she had to be ready to give this everything she had. It wasn't just because I was worried about getting hurt again. I wasn't going to open Danielle up to another round of this unless we had an agreement that was set in stone. We spent the rest of the session discussing things we both needed from each other if we were going to attempt this. After we agreed, she went home to tell her family. I stayed for a bit to go over things with Brian. I'm a little concerned about your quick change of heart, John. When you do things on the spur of the moment, it can cause more harm than good in the long run. This wasn't spur of the moment. I have been trying to work it out for weeks, but didn't think I could. This week I decided I had to make a decision and stick to it. Brian looked like he was trying to understand something. Okay, so you decided to make a decision, but why such a drastic change? I finally realized that in all the time I had known her, Jenny had never acted the way I saw in the video. She dressed sexy, but never slutty. She could have been an exotic dancer if she chose, but had never danced like one, even with me. She never got drunk and rarely passed the point of being a little tipsy. I thought about whom I wanted Danielle to be like when she grew up and there was only one person I could think of: Jenny. Something happened down there that she couldn't handle. I still hate what she did, but I don't believe she'll do it again. If I accept that it was a one-time incident, then I have to think about what you said to me about being a victim or a man. Some people would view a man as someone who wouldn't take crap off of anyone and would kick her to the curb, no matter what the consequences. Some would punish her for months or years before considering letting her come back. I decided that for me, being a man meant taking care of my daughter first. She needed Jenny home. Brian still didn't look convinced. But that sounds like you're trying to make everyone else happy. Is this what you want? I don't know how to answer that. None of this is what I want. You're asking me to choose between two miserable things, and then asking which one is less crappy than the other. I do want to fix things with her, but I don't have any idea how long it will take. I don't know if I should do it with her at Nicole's, or if she should be home. I'm not looking forward to the problems we're going to have, knowing that I can't just walk away like I've been doing since she left. In the end, it's just making a decision, then trying to live with the consequences. He thought for a while before responding. Well, I can tell you've thought this out, John. When you walked in the door the first time, I wouldn't have thought this was a possibility. I'm glad I was wrong. If I had to take a guess, I'd say you're right. She loves you very much, so if you can keep things together long enough to trust each other again, I think you can make it in the long run. I hope so, for both of our sakes. Brian gave me a serious look. But now that you've taken charge, I think it's time for us to move on. I looked at him with dismay. I don't do professional counseling, I just listen and try to help people when I can. I have a very good friend who is an excellent therapist and is very experienced in the kind of troubles you have ahead of you. His name is William and I'm asking you to take Jenny and meet with him. No matter how much you think you have figured out, things will be tough and you don't want it to affect Danielle or ruin what you are trying to accomplish. When I still didn't appear thrilled, he added, "If it would help, I could have Steve threaten to kick your ass." We both shared a laugh that helped relieve some of the tension. I thanked him for everything he had done as I left and got ready for yet another major challenge. She moved back that Saturday. It was wonderful for Danny. She and Jenny talked and played for hours. At the end of the night, Danielle insisted that both of us tuck her in. She refused to let Jenny leave and held her hand tightly until she fell asleep. It reinforced my belief that I had done the right thing. I couldn't have asked for a better person to care for my daughter. Afterwards, Jen and I talked quietly, then went to our separate bedrooms where we'd be staying until we both agreed to change our arrangement. It had been a very mixed homecoming for me. I was ecstatic because of how happy Danielle was. It also made me feel good to see how coming back had such an immediate impact on Jenny. She seemed different, more relaxed immediately. It wasn't as easy for me. Although I still knew I loved her, being this close without actually being close just reminded me of how f up everything had become. If it was just the two of us, I'd just avoid her until I was ready, but something like that would be painfully obvious to my daughter. I just smiled and tried to enjoy seeing Danny back to normal. It went that way for 3 weeks. Jenny was very respectful of my feelings. She didn't make any effort to push me, but she let me know that she was ready if I wanted to talk, or anything else. We started seeing William the first week Jenny came back. He was good at his job, but I didn't feel the kind of connection I had with Brian. He liked to talk about our feelings and do exercises that were supposed to help us see things from each other's point of view. I tried not to be obstinate, but I felt like it was a waste of time. The 4th week, I think Jenny was getting a little frustrated at my lack of warming to her. I started noticing her dressing a little sexier around the house and she touched my arm or leg every chance she got. It was pleasant, but very little had changed in my mind. It seemed like I was stuck. I felt more comfortable around her than when she first came back, but I didn't have any desire to touch her. There were 3 more weeks of nothing changing when she finally demanded that we talk. "John, I'm starting to get worried. I'm grateful that you asked me to come back and I'll wait as long as you need, but I don't feel like you really want me here." She looked at me like she was trying to read my thoughts. My eyes evaded hers. "I wouldn't have asked you to come home if I didn't want you here." Evidently, my acting wasn't very good. "Please honey, there is something bothering you and I want you to talk to me about it. How are we ever going to get past all of this if we don't talk about everything that's bothering us? It's one of our rules, no secrets. You wanted me to come back and fight for our marriage, well now you get your wish. You aren't going anywhere until you tell me what's wrong." She put her hands on her hips in defiance and I knew she wasn't going to let me off the hook. I had decided before I invited her back not to tell her about David or the tape. I didn't think it was necessary to make her live with that knowledge and I thought I would be alright. Now I realized it had been in my mind every time I thought about us getting closer. Now that I was on the spot, I didn't have time to think and it just spilled out. I told her everything about meeting David, hearing his version of the story and seeing the video. I told her that it didn't just happen, Megan had planned the whole thing before they ever left. Finally, I told her about destroying the tape when I couldn't watch anymore. "I swear I haven't been holding it against you, Jen. I just haven't been able to get those things out of my head." She stared at me in disbelief. I saw her lower lip quiver and knew she was able to completely break down. I was immediately sorry that I had told her. She pushed past me and ran up the stairs, ignoring my pleas to stop. I heard the bedroom door slam shut. Although I tried to coax her out of the room for hours, she completely ignored me. I called her mom, who had been watching Danielle today, and asked if she could stay overnight. I told her that Jenny and I had a fight, but not to worry. Jenny didn't come out all night. I fell asleep on the couch waiting for her. When I woke up the next morning, I had a blanket around me. Confused, I wondered how it got there. I stretched and tried to work the kinks out of my neck when I felt something with my leg. I looked down and saw Jenny curled up on the couch in front of me, using my leg as a pillow. I looked at her sleeping, eyes swollen from crying, and wanted to make her feel better somehow. I quietly slipped off the couch and into the kitchen, where I made breakfast and coffee. When it was finished, I brought it into the living room and put it down in front of her. I gently shook her shoulder until her eyes opened. It took her a second to focus, then she sat up quickly and pulled herself into my arms. She talked in a trembling voice. "I'm sorry that you had to go through all that because of what I did. I thought I had already hurt you as much as possible until yesterday. It must have been terrible for you to go through that by yourself. I don't know what else to say." She started sobbing again. "I'm just so sorry." "That's enough for now," I scolded. "I went to all the trouble of making breakfast. I expect you to eat every bite." When she looked at me like she was going to protest, I firmly told her that she had to take care of herself or that I would, so I just fed her like I would have done with my daughter. When she started eating on her own, I slid behind her and rubbed her neck and shoulders. There was so much tension, I wondered how she could have slept at all. When she finished, I took the dishes to the kitchen while she went up and showered. She came down afterward and told me it was my turn, that I smelled like the couch. I laughed as I headed up the stairs. The hot water felt good as I tried to stretch out from sleeping uncomfortably all night. I took my time and my thoughts drifted to breakfast. I thought about how she felt, leaning against me as I massaged her shoulders. I remembered how good it felt as my hands ran across her neck and down her back. I realized with a smile that I actually had, and you know what, the first one I could remember in weeks. It wasn't just a random reaction, I really felt the desire to go to her. I knew this wouldn't be the right day to approach her, so I closed my eyes thinking about how warm she felt on the couch. It felt really good to be thinking of her. I made a vow that the next time the situation presented itself, I would try to tactfully bring up us finally consummating her homecoming. It was a little bit of a dilemma because I wasn't sure if I should do something romantic or if I should keep it low-key. I didn't want to make a big deal out of it and make her feel pressured. After yesterday's events, I thought she might be a little timid about doing anything physical for a while. It didn't matter, she had let me know she was ready for weeks, patiently waiting for me. It would be easy for me to do the same. I got out of the shower and dried myself off, feeling markedly better. I brushed my teeth, shaved, put on deodorant and even splashed on cologne. Today would be a great day to take her out and do something special. We could pick up Danny afterward and do something as a family. My mood just continued to pick up as I planned the day. I had it all figured out and was ready to surprise her. I opened the door and saw Jen, sitting on my bed in her sexiest teddy. "Surprise," she said a little nervously. After not having it for 2 months, my first thought was that I was glad that I had taken the edge off in the shower. My second thought was, oh f. After only getting it in 3 weeks, I hoped that wouldn't be a problem. Jenny stood, looking a little unsteady. "John, I know I promised not to push you until you were ready, but I need you please." I should have said something immediately, but the shock of seeing her like that was overwhelming. I was also struck by how beautiful she looked. She still hadn't gained enough weight to get her figure back, but instead of detracting from her appearance, it made her look more innocent and fragile. I was torn between wanting to protect her and needing to throw her down on the bed. She began to get tears in her eyes. "John, please, I know how you're feeling. If you just will be with me this one time, I promise I won't ask you again." I realized she had misunderstood my hesitancy, so I stepped forward to embrace her. "Jenny, you don't understand. I want this too." I saw her expression change to hopeful. "I was afraid you wouldn't want to, considering the way things have been, especially after yesterday." "I don't want to, John. I need you." I ran my hand through her hair, brushing it out of her face. I gently stroked her cheek with my thumb as I pulled her face close to kiss her. I moved my lips to the side of her neck, where I knew she was sensitive. I moved down to her stomach. I wasn't going to be hurried. I wanted to savor every second of this. "Oh baby, that's so perfect, right there. Please don't stop that," she moaned. I was suddenly glad we hadn't tried this while Danielle was home. I wanted her to be so overwhelmed that she'd never forget today. I noticed a single tear running down her face. I was immediately concerned. "Jenny, what's wrong? Are you okay?" At first, she nodded yes, but she looked undecided. After a few seconds, she spoke. "What we just did was wonderful, John. But could we slow down now?" I didn't know what to say. I had been so fired up to do something she'd never forget, I wasn't sure what to do next. We changed positions and started again, but the mood had been broken. I wasn't sure what she wanted, and there was definitely something bothering her. I knew something was wrong, but after 4 months I couldn't help it. I needed the release. I put my hand on her shoulder. "Jenny, what happened? You seemed to be really enjoying yourself, and then you got upset. Did I do something wrong?" "No, it wasn't wrong," she said slowly, "but it wasn't right either." Noting my perplexed look, she continued. "John, both of us have been putting off really talking about things since the night I left. I think we need to do this now." I wasn't so sure. "Jenny, we just finally got things back on track, why now?" She looked up at me with eyes that reflected a sadness that startled me. "How can you say that? Nothing is on track." When I couldn't think of a way to respond, she said something that made my stomach turn. "Tell me truth, weren't you just thinking about the video?" I tried to stammer out a defense, but she cut me off. "John, I want to try something. Do you remember the exercise William told us to use? You mean the one where we try to say what each other is thinking?" She nodded, "Exactly." She sat up in bed and pulled me to face her. "I want to tell you what I think you're feeling about seeing the video from the hotel, then I want you to try." I couldn't believe she was bringing this up now. It seemed like such a waste. I didn't want to say anything stupid after us finally getting back together, so I motioned for her to go ahead. "You are hurt that I could enjoy myself with those men and Megan. You are concerned that I feel there is something missing in our marriage, which is why I did those things. You don't know if you can trust me because I did that, then lied to you. She looked away from me. You are worried about what I think about you physically because, well, one of them was large, she finished with difficulty. I tried to stay calm, but she was closer than I wanted to admit. That's quite a list, is there anything else? She looked back at me. You think I liked being with them more than you because I let him. She couldn't say David's name out loud. Take me in a way I wouldn't let you. The look on my face must have given me away. How could she know me so well? I was embarrassed that I could be so transparent. She turned away for a moment, then looked back at me with tears brimming in her eyes. She refused to wipe them away. Was I right? When I nodded, she told me to start. I hated the thought of this. The reason I liked Brian so much in the first place was that he didn't have us do stupid crap like this. If she wanted me to know how she felt, she should just tell me. I scrambled to come up with a list off the top of my head. You are embarrassed that I saw you doing those things. You are sad that I had to see it and what happened between us. You want me to let you make it up to me. I tried, but couldn't come up with any more. Well, I tried to get a clue from her eyes, but couldn't read her expression. It was almost like the first time I saw her at Nicole's house. Kind of detached, but still obviously suffering. Not even close. She didn't elaborate and I began to feel uncomfortable. I suddenly realized how naked I was and awkwardly covered myself. What do you mean? I wondered what I could have missed. I'm sad because I have to live the rest of my life knowing you think of me as a warehouse. I was shocked. Whoa, I never said anything like that. I love you. I had you come home so we could fix things. Where the hell did you get the idea I felt like that about you? She kept giving me the same look and said, it's not an idea, it's the truth. When I couldn't think of what to say, she went on. How does that saying go? She paused for a moment. Oh yeah, you are what you choose to be. I lived my entire life without ever doing anything like what happened in New Orleans. I choose to be a good person, I didn't lie, people had respect for me and I was loved. In 2 days, I destroyed everything and I can never get it back. You will never look at me again without qualifying it by thinking about the fact that for 48 hours I chose to be a warehouse. I tried to interrupt, but she stopped me. It's my fault all of this has happened, I don't blame you at all. Somewhere in my heart, I wanted to believe that you could forgive me, but I was wrong. I knew it when you stopped me from helping you. You were thinking about the video while we were having it, weren't you? Now I was completely busted. I tried to think of a way to defend myself. After all, how could I help what flashed in my mind? It had only been 2 months since I saw the video, how could anyone get that out of their head? In the end, I wound up nodding stupidly. You tried to make the thing really amazing for me, didn't you? Yes, but what's wrong with that? You didn't do it for me. You did it to prove that you could do it better than the others and that I didn't need anyone else. You wanted to make me see that you were the best. I still don't see how that was wrong. This was the first intimate moment we've had in 4 months and you used it to one-up the guys who treated me like a WH. What makes you think I'd want you to treat me like they did, just better? This was getting out of control fast. I wasn't doing that. I wasn't one-upping anyone. I was just trying to make you happy. She seemed frustrated. You don't understand, I was already happy. I didn't go to New Orleans to get laid. I didn't go there to be used like a cheap S, and then thrown away. I didn't enjoy the way it made me feel and I never want to do anything like that again. You keep thinking I did this because of something you did wrong or that I wanted something you couldn't give me. Her expression softened. I have never regretted anything about our relationship other than the problems we were having. You are the best thing that's ever happened to me. I didn't have fantasies about other guys. I never felt like I was missing out on anything by being with you. I made a horrible decision. I still don't understand why I did it, but I would do anything to take it back. For 6 months, I lived with it every day without being able to talk to you about it. It has killed me in ways I can't describe. Now when you finally give me another chance, I find out that you think you need to compete with it? I couldn't just take it anymore. I saw the video. You did enjoy it. You liked it when Jake F you. You enjoyed Megan going down on you and you enjoyed doing it to her. You liked it when David did that in the ass. What exactly is it that I don't understand? I suddenly realized I was shouting. Jenny laid down on the bed and curled into a ball. OSH, Jenny, I'm sorry. Honey, I didn't mean that. I had no idea what to say. As she sobbed, I tried to calm her down. When nothing seemed to work, I just sat there feeling helpless. I couldn't believe I could get so angry, so fast. How could I treat her like that right after she opened herself up to me? It's okay, I told you I understand. Her voice sounded small and frightened. I don't care if this is the worst fight we ever have, we are going to talk this out now. I don't want any more stalling. She started gaining some strength. Yes, you saw how I acted on the video. I can't deny any of it. I won't make excuses. But you didn't see when they left and I cried myself to sleep. You didn't see the next morning when I was in so much pain, I couldn't make it out of the room and Megan had to get me pain pills from one of the bridesmaids. You couldn't know how humiliating it was to have the bride ask me what happened and if I was okay. By now, she had built her own head of steam. I F up everything. She looked me in the eyes and didn't flinch. I acted like a WH and they treated me like one. The only thing missing was the money on the nightstand. I love you with every bit of my heart, but I still did every one of those sick things you saw. I have to live with that for the rest of my life. I know that if we stay together one day we'll have a fight, it might be a week, it might be 10 years from now and you'll think about the video. It's forever, John. I can never get back what we had, the way you used to look at me, like I was somebody special. She stopped, suddenly unable to continue. I reached out to grab her, but she hit at my chest with her fists. Undeterred, I just pulled her to me and held her. She stopped fighting and started crying hard against my chest. I could feel her tears running down my skin and felt it was my turn to confess. I didn't know what else to do. When I asked you to come home, I wasn't sure if I was ready. I just knew that I had to do it for Danielle. I felt her shoulders heave as she cried even harder against me. I did it because I couldn't stand to see her so upset. I couldn't stand to see you hurting like that either. I'm sorry if it caused some of this. I was just trying to make everyone happy. I felt her push away from me slightly. I looked down to see her staring up at me. What about you? I just shrugged. What about me? I felt like no matter what. I missed you. You are my best friend and my lover. If things weren't so great in the love department, I could live with it. As long as you two were happy, we could work out the rest. Damn it, John, don't you get it? There is no working out the rest without the love. Why would you want to work anything out with me after what happened if you don't love me? I didn't say I don't love you. I just didn't know how long it would take us to get things right again. You don't understand how hard this has been for me. Every night I've got Danielle asking me why I won't forgive you and telling me how much she misses you. I have our friends dropping hints about how much better everything would be if I gave you another chance. Then there's your family, who I love, hinting about it every chance they've got. Plus I missed you so much I thought I was going crazy. I looked away in frustration. She touched my face with her hand. I really loved how she did that. It was a small gesture, but one that always was special to me. I understand how hard it was for you, which is why I never pressured you for anything. Even when I knew you were holding back, I didn't push because I wanted you to talk to me when you were ready. I would have waited, no matter how long it took. She took a deep breath, then continued. John, if we had kept making love the way it started today, what would have happened tomorrow? I didn't know where she was going with this, so I just shrugged. If you gave me the single greatest experience of my life, what's next? What happens tomorrow if I'm in the wrong mood or something and I don't have an ending? What happens in a month or two when things go back to normal? If you look at this as a competition, when it isn't perfect, am I going to have to start faking it so you don't worry? We've had it before when I didn't finished. I still have loved every single time we've ever done it because it was with you. I've even loved it when one of us wasn't in the mood so we just held each other. I had to admit, I hadn't thought beyond today. I didn't think about it like that. I just wanted the first time back to be special. Anything we did together would have been special. The way you started felt great, but I didn't come up here for a bunch of you know what. I came up here because I was lonely, I missed my husband and wanted him to make love to me. After all the things you've had to deal with, I wanted our first time back to be something that wouldn't remind you of what I did. I wanted to give you something I couldn't have possibly ever given anyone else, me. The way we did it together at the end was exactly what I wanted. I just wanted to feel. It felt wonderful for me because it was with you, the only person I've ever loved enough to totally give myself to. It was special, just for us. Later, when we aren't both dealing with the past, we can do whatever we want. I'll do anything you ask me to, except share you with someone else. For now, I just want to take it slowly and for us to get used to each other again. It's what I need. Ok? I sat quietly, holding her. It was a lot to consider. I couldn't believe I had thought about it so differently than she had. I couldn't be upset by her request because I was the one who insisted she not come home like a servant, trying to make it up to me. She was doing exactly what I insisted, standing up for herself. It occurred to me that the resistance to the new counselor, not wanting to tell her about the video and not letting myself get too close since she came home were all tied together. When I first found out about her trip I was angry, no, furious. A part of me hated her and wanted to make her suffer. When I found out that she had been tricked and hadn't done this on purpose, I wasn't angry anymore, but I still didn't want to get closer to her. Even when I invited her home, I never pictured myself being with her or trusting her. I couldn't place it at the time, or maybe I didn't want to face the truth, but she was right. I had been afraid. I was scared that she had acted that way with Megan and the two men because I wasn't enough. Before today, when I thought about what she had done, I let my insecurities control me. I felt like a 15-year-old who just got shot down by the prettiest girl in school. Now I was sick and tired of being scared. I refused to live my life afraid of what might happen. It wasn't going to make me happy, and it would keep Jenny in a place where she couldn't be happy either. We both deserved better than that. Now that everything was out in the open, maybe we could finally both be happy. I knew her better than anyone and had no doubt she was being completely honest with me. Before any of this had happened, I considered myself an incredibly lucky man. Very few men find a woman who can completely change their life the way Jenny had done for me. I loved everything about her, especially the fact that she forced me to be a better person than I would have been without her. Things still weren't perfect, but I finally felt like I wanted her home and needed to be her husband again. As I held her tightly, I reassured her that I did forgive her and would never use what she did to punish her again. We stayed in bed for hours, just touching and talking. A thought suddenly occurred to me. Jenny, what kind of pills did you say you took? Hello. Hello David, this is John, Jenny's husband. I need you to do something for me. What? He sounded suspicious. I filled him in on what I needed to finish this damn thing off, once and for all. When I finished, it didn't surprise me when he said no. I wasn't in the mood to take no for an answer. Well, I have a problem. I have a video of my wife being taken advantage of by 3 people conspiring to get her drunk and seduce her. I'm pretty sure that sort of thing is frowned on by the authorities. At the very least, it would suck to have the cops pull you out of that fancy law office to question you about it. He was quiet for several seconds, then spoke with just a hint of a quiver in his voice. So now you're going to blackmail me? I sighed. No, I'm not. Your behavior Sunday after the party changed my mind about wanting to do something to get back at you. I wanted to point out what I could have done. I'm not going to come after you or threaten you to get what I want, you have my word. However, I think you know that you owe both of us big time, and I'd like you to do it because it's the right thing. I'm not sure I could get a regular lawyer to do it. Even if I could, it would mean bringing someone else in on this. I don't want to do that to Jenny. He took a minute to think about it, and then agreed to all of my requests. For the next week, Jenny and I didn't make love. It was almost like the first time had been so awkward that we were afraid to try it again. I know part of me was concerned about making yet another mistake. The weekend was busy and we didn't do more than hold each other and quietly make out. On Tuesday, my package arrived at work. I signed for it and immediately left, hoping to bring things to a close. When I arrived at the house, I waited at the door for a moment and took a deep breath. It was important that I do everything right. Since I wasn't able to win Jenny back the way I had expected to, it was important that I do this for her. Even if she didn't see this the way that I did and it wasn't as big a deal to her, I needed it for me. My marriage had been torn away from me, with Danny and I suffering terribly as a result. I couldn't just sit by and let myself be a victim, again hearing Brian's words echoing in my head. The door opened. What are you doing here? Megan asked suspiciously. I looked over the woman who had done so much to me and my family. I have never raised my hand against a woman, not even a push. In that first moment, I had an irresistible urge not only to hit her, but to beat the living s out of her. I steadied myself and the moment passed. I'm here because we need to talk. She looked at me nervously. Listen, now isn't a very good time. I was just on my way out. Well, I suggest you change your plans. This is for you. I handed her a manila envelope. She took it and briefly looked at the contents. I took a great deal of satisfaction from the change in her haughty expression. Her hands were shaking as she lowered the papers and looked up at me. Do you want to come in? She said quietly. You think I want to be alone with you? I scoffed. I'm happy right where I am. That is a copy of my lawsuit against you for alienation of affection. If you'll look at the bottom, you will see I have a very high power firm out of New Orleans taking care of me. They recommended I sue you for $10 million. Her face went from fear to astonishment. $10 million. Are you out of your mind? I couldn't make that much in my life. No, but I could get a judgment against you and would get a large portion of your paycheck until you're old and gray. Do I have your undivided attention? She licked her lips nervously and nodded. That is a copy of the document. You haven't been officially served. The original is going to be put into a safety deposit box along with the video David made of your activities in the hotel room with Jenny Friday night. Her mouth literally dropped open. I guess David never mentioned he videotaped all his private parties. I paused, but she didn't respond. The funny thing is that I might not have had a slam dunk case if you hadn't decided to walk Jenny over to the side of the room right next to the camera when you lied to her about what was going to happen several times. She tried to speak, faltered, and then asked timidly, "What do you want?" I let her squirm for a few seconds before finishing things. I want you to tell me the truth about the whole weekend. You don't know what I've already found out, so be careful. If you lie to me, or if I think you're lying to me, you can expect someone to come and serve you with the original and there will be no going back." It took some time, but she related everything to me. Her story reinforced what Jenny and David had already told me. There were some new details, but nothing I hadn't expected. When she finished, I asked a couple of questions, which she answered fully. When I was satisfied, I turned to leave. I stopped and turned back to her. "One more thing, Megan. I hope you understand that if I find out you've tried to contact Jenny, told anyone else about New Orleans, sent anyone a copy of the video from the website or interfered in our lives in any way, we'll be seeing each other in court. Do you understand me?" She nodded with tears in her eyes. I wanted to rejoice in the pain I caused her, but the truth was that she was a pathetic, broken woman. There wasn't any satisfaction to be had. Part of me wished she was a guy so I could have hit her. Maybe I would have felt a little better. At least I could give Jenny some peace. On my way home, I called Steve to ask if they could do me a favor and pick up Danielle. I explained the situation and he said he would be glad to. When I made it home, he was already there. I explained to Jenny that I wanted us to have the night free. Although she looked like she suspected something, she didn't object. She gave Danielle a hug and kiss, then watched her and Steve go. She turned back to me and said, "Okay, what's going on? I know when you're planning something." I sat her down on the couch and went out to the car. I came back with another envelope, which I handed to her. "Jenny, when you told me how afraid you were about what could happen in the future with someone seeing the video from the party, I decided to call David and ask for his help." Noting her startled look, I quickly continued. "He found a lawyer in his company he trusted and asked for a couple of favors. They fired off a letter threatening a lawsuit to the website, saying that you were drugged and that we were going to inform the police about the incident. Since all we asked was that the video be altered to remove you from it, I guess they figured it was more trouble than it was worth to fight it. This is a letter from them acknowledging the complaint and that they edited you out of the video." I briefly looked at the next one, then handed it to her. This one is an apology from David, expressing his relief that we were able to work things out. He sent the original copy of the tape and included a notarized document that swears there are no other copies. There is nothing else anyone can see you on. This third one is a lawsuit drawn up against Megan. Because of what she had said on the tape, plus the things she told David, she wouldn't have a prayer in court. I just got back from talking to her and said I would put the suit on hold unless she tried contacting you or attempted to interfere in our lives again. Jenny looked confused. "What do you mean again? Who do you think sent me the URL for the website?" She went from confused to furious. "That's how you found out? That be sent it to you? I'll kill her." I touched her arm gently and tried to calm her down. "No, you won't. What she did was vindictive and petty, but you couldn't have gone on lying to me about it indefinitely. The guilt would have eventually pushed us apart. She did us a favor by making us face it. I just wanted to make sure you'd never have to worry about her interfering again by telling someone else someday. You know she thinks she's in love with you, right?" Jenny looked stunned. "Are you sure?" She admitted everything. "She followed you out here from New York, messed with your head about our problems, maneuvered into you cheating on me and made sure she was involved. She was trying to break us up, hoping that she'd be able to make you fall for her. She swears that when you were friends back in New York, you dropped a lot of hints that you felt more deeply for her than just as a friend." Jenny's indignant look was all the proof I needed to see. "It doesn't matter if it's true, that's the way she perceived it. If it had been a guy friend, you never would have trusted him the way you did with her. Since you never realized how she felt about you, it left you open to her manipulating you. Looking back on it, I never liked her and wished I would have spoken up about it. Anyway, because of the way you were acting Saturday morning, she knew that Friday didn't have the effect on you she had hoped for. She wanted it to happen again. She had it stuck in her head that if you just had a wild enough time, you wouldn't want to settle back into your old life. She knew the details about the party. All the women invited had been warned about the things that would go on. When she got the pills for you, the bridesmaid warned her that they were really strong and couldn't be taken with alcohol. That's when she got the idea. Because of how messed up you were feeling, Megan thought that if you got wasted, she could get to you again, but she knew you wouldn't let your guard down like the night before. She didn't tell you what the pills were and made sure you took a couple before leaving for the party. After a few drinks, she could tell you were out of it and started working on you to get something to happen. She knew they were videotaping, so if you wouldn't tell me when you got back, she would have a way letting me know without getting her hands dirty. She waited a while after you came back, hoping you'd calm down and start talking to her again. When she realized that wasn't going to happen, she sent me the email. I'm not sure if it was because she was still hoping something could happen with you, or if it was just out of spite. I told her it was a pretty shitty way to treat someone you claim to love, but I don't know if anything can get through to her. I took a breath, and then held Jenny's hands. Look, I just wanted to make sure that you wouldn't have to deal with this anymore. You know what you said about me never looking at you the same again was wrong. I may not have handled this whole thing very well, but I love you. I asked you back because I knew I could never feel this way about anyone else. Maybe I did it too quickly trying to make everyone else happy, but I never doubted things would be great between us again. It's going to take some time, but I will never stop working on this. You are everything to me. We kissed and held each other tightly. As I felt her tremble, I was glad to have finally been able to take some of this burden off her shoulders. That's when I realized I had forgotten the other surprise. I pushed her away from me gently. Jenny, I have something else for you. I pulled the last document out of the envelope and handed it to her. This is something that should have been taken care of a long time ago. Jenny's eyes brimmed with tears as she began reading the papers. I watched with satisfaction as the tears began flowing freely. She carefully set the papers down and threw herself into my arms, pulling against me so tightly that it hurt. She looked up into my eyes. Are you sure? I smiled, knowing that this one unselfish act would help ease more of her fear and pain than all of the other things I had done combined. It's official. Now you're not only my wife, you are Danielle's mother. There's no going back, now we have to make everything work. She turned and leaned back against my chest as she lovingly looked at the adoption papers David's office had drawn up. I caressed her softly as she read, enjoying the feeling of her body against mine. I let her stay there until she was ready to move. She took the papers into the other room and put them somewhere safe. Then she came back and took my hand, leading me up the stairs without a word. There was no need. When we entered the bedroom, she pulled me to her and kissed me softly. She moved her face from side to side, kissing me hungrily, her lips lightly teasing mine. She smiled, knowing how ticklish I was, but refused to let me get away. Jenny, I'd like to be more than a spectator, if you don't mind. She paused to enjoy what I was doing. At first, I was disappointed, but then I realized how much I wanted to make love to her. I could feel her beginning to tremble. When I was sure she was ready, I gently pushed up so she knew I wanted her to move. She turned her head to me and we kissed, softly without rushing. We stayed like that, not moving any faster, for so long that I lost track of time. I looked at the clock by the bed and was shocked that we had been locked in that position for almost 45 minutes. We had engaged in marathon sessions before, but not like this. Everything felt so perfect. I wish we could have stayed like that all day, but I knew it had to end. She slid up so that we were face to face and she looked me intently in the eyes. That was wonderful, thank you. I held her face with both hands as I kissed her. No, Jenny, I'm the one that needs to thank you. 2 months later, Brian was working in his office when his phone rang. Hello. Brian, it's John. Can I stop by and talk to you a minute? Sure, I have some free time around 5. Can you make it then? I'll be there. When I stepped into his office, I thought about how much things had changed since my first visit. Reconciliation with Jenny, my own sense of how to handle things and the way we refocused our lives. At Brian's quiet urgings, we started attending his church and found many positives for our lives by helping others. Danielle really enjoyed attending and I loved seeing her discover the kind of things I had been raised with. Things were almost perfect. They always are before the bottom drops out. Brian met me at the front door. John, it's good to see you. Your call sounded urgent. Is everything okay? No, it's not. Something terrible happened yesterday. He ushered me into his office where I sat down on the familiar couch. Things have been shaky for a couple of weeks. She has been pushing me away and came up with a bunch of excuses to avoid us having you know what. I wanted to talk to her about it, but didn't want to jump to conclusions. Then yesterday I came home early and heard her talking to her sister in the kitchen. I was on my way in to say hi when I heard her say, if that bastard thinks I'm going to keep doing things his way, he's out of his mind. They talked about a lot of things. I couldn't catch most of it, but what I did hear was devastating. It was obvious she was getting ready for a big confrontation about doing things my way. He looked concerned. That's very distressing. Did you talk to her about it? No, I was too upset. Noting his disapproving look, I tried to defend myself. I couldn't just barge into the kitchen in front of her sister and start a fight. I went for a drive and when I came back, Nicole was gone. Danielle and Jenny were having dinner, so there was no chance. I just didn't feel up to it when we went to bed. I said I was tired and laid there until she fell asleep. Then I went to the living room and sat there for most of the night. Things have been so great between us for the last couple of months, I can't believe she feels that way. I don't know what to do. Today she called me at work and told me we had to talk. She said it was something that couldn't wait and she wanted to do it with just the two of us, so she was sending Danny over to Nicole's. She asked me to meet her at the hotel bar where we used to go dancing. Brian and I talked for a while, but didn't really accomplish much. I really wasn't expecting it to. I just needed to talk to someone before I went to meet Jenny. That brings me back to where I started all this. Drinking alone at the bar. Waiting for what I am afraid could be the end of my marriage. After going through so much and fighting our way back, I couldn't believe it might end like this. After hearing some of what she said to her sister, I didn't know if she even wanted to continue working on things. Even if she did, I took her back under the conditions we agreed to, and it had only been 4 months. If she was going to demand I drop everything, it was asking too much. It would take a lot longer than that to build back the kind of trust we used to have. If she refuses to see reason, I'll have no choice but to end it. I think about that night all the time lately. It showed me how much was still wrong between Jenny and I more clearly than any lecture from William, Brian, or any of my friends could have done. I guess from the beginning of this, I've made a number of misjudgments about both Jenny and myself. My friends saw some of the mistakes and tried to subtly help me find my way. I'm lucky to have people that care about me enough to try, even though I didn't always like what they said. As I walk down the hallway toward the group waiting for me, I don't have much time to think about it right now. However, it seems so appropriate now that I remember that lesson and what I learned. I saw Jenny walk through the door and watched as men stopped and turned to see the beautiful, radiant, well-dressed woman gliding through the crowd. My stomach turned as I thought about the possibility that things were going to again go bad. She walked up and kissed me on the cheek. With a serious expression, she asked to move to a booth in the corner. When we sat down, the waitress asked if we would like anything. I offered to buy her a drink, but she just asked for water. I took the opportunity to order my second Long Island, feeling the need for something to help deaden my senses. After letting the waitress get out of earshot, Jenny spoke. "John, I'm sorry if I've been acting strangely lately. Something has happened that is going to change things between us." I was too worked up to listen to her, so I interrupted. "Look, I know what's going on. I heard you and Nicole talking." She gave me a surprised look. It almost seemed like she was disappointed. "I don't know what caused this," I continued, "but I'm not going to put up with it. If you think you're going to force me into changing things with threats, you're mistaken. I love you, but I'm not going to be a doormat." "Really?" Jenny looked at me with something that almost seemed like mirth. It was beyond my comprehension how she could think there was anything funny about the situation. Jenny scolded me, "So you were eavesdropping? What happened to the rule about us talking things out and never going to bed angry?" She had to have seen how upset I was, and suddenly her expression softened. After all, I can't have my baby's father not trusting me. I sat there for a second stunned, thinking I had imagined what she just said. "Did you say?" Jenny couldn't hide her smile anymore. "Yes, you goof. You're going to be a father again. I'm pregnant." I didn't have time to think about anything except how relieved I was that I had been so wrong about tonight. I leaned over the table and grabbed her face to kiss her. The position was awkward and I realized I was pulling her into the table. I quickly got up and urged her out of the booth so I could hold her while I tried to take in the incredible change in events. We held each other without saying anything for a long time. Finally, I collected myself enough to talk. "When did you find out?" Jen raised her hand to touch my cheek like she did so often. I always wondered if it was her favorite gesture because she liked it or if it was because she knew I loved it. "Just today. The doctor said he's sure that it happened the day you surprised me with the adoption papers. The way you made love to me was something I'll never forget. I'm so glad that our child was created that way." I didn't know what else to say. There were so many things running through my head, it was like my system just shut down. Finally, I was able to get my head around everything. It occurred to me that unlike my experience with Danielle's mother, I was actually excited from the first second she told me. I couldn't believe how much different it felt than before, when Katie told me the same thing. However, I wasn't ready to let her off the hook just yet. "I can't believe you screwed with me like that. You scared the hell out of me." She smiled. "I'm sorry, but you shouldn't have jumped to conclusions. Why didn't you just ask me what was going on?" I was so embarrassed, I must have looked like a complete moron. It happened so fast that I didn't have time to think. "What the hell were you talking about yesterday? You said that you wouldn't let me run your life anymore." "No, I said I wouldn't let him run my life, my boss. He was upset because I've already taken so much time off from work in the last few months. He warned me that he'd have to let me go if anything else happened. Well, I'd say this is a pretty big something, and I'm not going to drag myself into work when I'm not feeling well just to keep him happy. Haven't you noticed how sick I've been the last couple of weeks?" By this time, I knew there was no hiding from how badly I had misjudged everything. "I did, but I thought it was because you were avoiding me." Jenny couldn't suppress a laugh. "You thought I'd make myself sick to avoid you?" I think she noticed how uncomfortable I was and finally stopped picking on me. "I thought something might be up, so I took a pregnancy test. It came up positive, but I wanted to check with the doctor before I told you." I thought I was going to go crazy having to wait until today to find out, so I decided to tell Nicole. I was talking to her about it when you evidently decided to play detective. I guess I should have told you first, but I just wanted to be sure. You've had enough bad surprises from me. I wanted to be able to give you a good one. Forgive me? Now it was my turn to smile. Well, at this point I wake up every morning assuming I'll have to forgive you for something anyway, so I'll just add this to the list. She tried to look indignant, but failed miserably as she punched me in the arm. Just remember our list of rules, mister. When I get fat and cranky, I expect you to attend to me properly. It will be my pleasure, milady, I said with a mock bow. I heard a voice over my shoulder, can we join the party now? When I turned, I was surprised to see Steve and Sharon. Pushing Steve aside, Sharon grabbed me in a crushing hug. I really didn't know she was that strong. She kissed me on the cheek and said, I am so happy for you too. Steve waited, looking impatient. When she moved on to Jenny, he stepped in to shake my hand and even gave me a quick hug. In case you're wondering, Jenny invited us. I turned back to my wife, who looked suddenly somber. I called them after I talked to you. I didn't think you'd mind, and I wanted them to be able to share this with us. If it hadn't been for their help, I don't know if you would have given me another chance. I understood how sensitive she was about what she had done and how close we came to not working it out. I didn't want anything to spoil this mood, so I put my arm around her shoulder reassuringly. She smiled again. Steve told me how he had to threaten to kick your ass to make you call Brian. I grinned as I recalled my reluctance to face things when all of this started. That's right, Steve beamed, I take full credit for fixing you too. As a reward for my infinite patience and foresight, I should be declared godfather to my namesake. Namesake? I laughed heartily. I'm sorry, under no circumstance will I name my child Shithead. I had to duck quickly to avoid the incoming punch. About an hour later, we finally said goodnight to our two friends. Jenny led me to the room she had reserved earlier in the day. Despite her enthusiasm, Jenny still seemed concerned. John, please tell me that this is what you want. I know that we still have a long way to go for things to be right between us, but I'm so happy about this. It's really important to me that you're happy about it too. I didn't hesitate, this is incredible news. I wish we didn't have the other stuff to work through, but I'm very happy. I can't wait until we get to tell Danny she's going to be a big sister. She's going to be thrilled out of her mind. Jenny's mood brightened. Well, that's for tomorrow. We only have a few months until you're not going to want to have it with me, so we better start doing it as much as we can now. I'm not ever going to complain about more, you know what, Jen, but don't worry, I won't want to be cutting back any time in the near future. Remember, this isn't my first time through this. I know exactly how beautiful you're going to be. We stopped talking as I kissed her softly, then began working my way to her neck. I found that everything seemed a little different with the knowledge that she was carrying my child. We made love tenderly, trying to do it just like the day I surprised her with the adoption papers. When we finished, I held her tightly, knowing how drastically things had changed for me in just a few hours. After several minutes, I broke the silence. Since I have your commitment to having it a lot, I think we should consider starting right away. She smiled mischievously. Well, I was checking out the snack bar while you were saying goodbye to Steve. I found something really interesting. She rolled over and grabbed her purse. Okay, that's one I never thought of. Now those memories help me to appreciate how truly blessed I am. Jenny had a flawless pregnancy, which I'm thankful for. I savored every moment of that time with her. It had been so different with Katie. I was grateful for another chance to experience it the right way. Danny was a treasure. She read to Jenny's tummy often, making sure to kiss her there so when the baby was born it would know how much she loved it. Pushing the memories from my mind, I walked through the doors into the waiting area to see our friends and Jenny's whole family waiting impatiently. I was torn between wanting to be a smartass and my desire to scream with joy. I finally settled for quiet exuberance. It's a boy, I forced myself to say without yelling. After the celebration died down a little, I finally got to enjoy the moment I had been looking forward to for months. Danny, do you want to come meet your little brother? The end. What do you think about this story, and let's discuss it in the comments.